Aloha, everybody. I have been wanting to try a live YouTube for a long time. I would love to see who comes and to offer some free coaching to traders and investors who want to have some support. I have a Discord room where I do have a membership for some coaching. But because this is in the public forum, I thought I would offer this too on occasion. I've had a handful of traders ask for it, and I'm happy to be here. So I've never used this before, and I'm kind of curious if anybody's here. So I see, looks like I have at least one person. Please say something in the chat box. I hope that I can see you, but what I'm trying to figure out is how I can get you, if you want coaching or someone else wants coaching, into the room live. So it's going to be a little bit of a, dry run today. And then hopefully I'll get better at this as I go. But ultimately, I just want to be a contribution to you guys. And all right, so Tom, thank you so much. I'm so glad you said you gave your wave. And Tom, am I correct that you gave me some nice comments on the My Investing Club video interview that I did with Alex and company about 3 weeks ago? I think I remember your image there having said some nice things, or maybe you said some nice things on my podcast channel. So I'm glad you're here. And Thomas, if you can figure out how to come in, if you do want some free coaching, please just get yourself on here. I don't know if I have to approve you, but anyway, yes, I follow your pod. Well, thank you for following my podcast, Thomas. I've been wanting to do these live YouTubes for a while, and I finally just pressed the button, even though I didn't know what I was doing, and hopefully it works. So, Thomas, is there a topic that you want me to talk about? If there's something that you're struggling with in your trading, your investing, or just, in life in general, feel free to, at least put what you would like me to address. And I'm happy to speak directly to you if that would be of service to you. Obviously, I know this is a live forum, so, some people might be hesitant to speak to some of the challenges they're having in this kind of a public forum. But if and only if you're comfortable doing so, please feel free. I'll just stay for a few minutes, but I wanted to see if I could pull this off. And so far, so good. And I'm glad I'm not here by myself, Tom. So, Thomas, thank you for joining me. At the end of the day, a lot of the work that I do is to provide tools, right? Tools for traders and investors and, just individuals to have. I've done a lot of work on myself and gathered a lot of tools along the way. And I just feel like, well, what's the point of having all these tools if I don't share them? It's like having a Sears Master Crafts set of tools, and it's just sitting in my garage. Like, I might as well bring those tools out to people so that everybody can use them too. As most of you that maybe have watched some of my podcasts know. Oh, good. Thomas has a question. Okay, so a key in eliminating FOMO and the noise. Okay, so I'm going to break that up into two separate parts. Thank you for that question. So, okay, good. We have Andres is here too. Is that you, Andre? Oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. I miss you, Andre. All right, so Thomas, let me answer your question first. So a key at eliminating FOMO is what I'm going to address first. So what's up with the FOMO? It always comes down to usually our coming from a place of scarcity, our coming from a place of fear, right? That's the first initial in FOMO is fear of missing out. But what I've seen over the years of coaching traders especially is that usually the fear is bigger than just the missing out. It kind of stems from something behind that fear of missing out. And what I will ask you, if you're open to, sharing more here, Tom, it's like, what is that pressure? You probably have pressure or a timeline upon yourself that possibly isn't realistic or pragmatic. So what happens is that pain starts to feel like, if I don't take this and this doesn't work for me, then I am going to be further away from the deadline I have set for myself. And so that's my question to you. Do you feel that your date of expectation on yourself, and I'm curious if you'll answer me in the moment, but how long have you been trading? Sometimes traders come into this, look, understandably gun-ho, desirous of an outcome, desirous of getting to a finish line, but that isn't always realistic. One of the assessments I have, which I love it so much because it helps us measure how appropriate that self kind of motivation is. So for example, it's, today's Wednesday. If you came to me, Thomas, and said, Kim, I'm going to run in an Ironman this Saturday, I'd be like, really? That gives you about 48 hours, maybe 72 hours to compete in an Ironman. Have you been training? Have you been, watching your nutrition? Have you prepared your body, mind, and spirit for this race? And you'd be like, no, that's okay. I'm going to do it anyway. Now, that is a next level of ambition. And there's nothing wrong with having ambition, and there's nothing wrong with having big, bodacious plans, but you want to be sure that it's in proportion to what you can actually expect of yourself, body, mind, and spirit. So that's what I want to leave with you, Thomas, is just think about, is the fear of missing out informed possibly by an unrealistic goal that you have upon yourself? And if that's the case, then you're going to constantly set yourself up for FOMO because you have this metaphoric gun to your head. So hopefully that helps. Let me get to the second. So the noise, that's such a great question. How do you eliminate the noise? Here's the thing about the noise. We expose ourselves to the noise by constantly paying attention to what's happening online. It's part of our culture now. We can't kind of avoid it, but we can limit it. So I would say be very discriminatory in who you listen to. You don't want to be listening to the people who are all talk and no action. A lot of the different Twitter feeds that I watch, you can tell within a relatively short amount of time what their motivation is. Are they doing it to just kind of get an ego boost? Are they trying to do it to make themselves look good, or to get followers, or to look like, they got it going on? You can tell that honestly within a couple of days of following anybody. Are they coming from a place of really wanting to be a contribution to you? If that isn't the case, this sounds radical, but I would say unfollow them. The less competition for your attention, the better. Let the people you follow and that you pay any attention to, if they are not nourishing you, if they are not constantly kind of making you feel emboldened or healthier as a trader, and it's just like, the Lambeau flash bullshit, just unfollow them. You don't need that. That is noise, but that's noise that can really cost you. Just from your focus and your attention to detail. If you watch my podcast with Celeste Headley, the podcast was called, her book's called Do Nothing. I don't remember what I titled that podcast, but she talks about us having 4 hours of cognitive focus a day. Be very discriminatory in where that 4 hours goes. All right, so you said I'm older now. Yes, elimination has become a theme in all aspects of my life. Good, perfect. Andres, I'm going to get to your question. So, Tom, the movie that I want to suggest to you is not a movie about trading, but it's a movie. Somebody should do that. Maybe I should do that one day because there's really no movies or documentaries about like the full like journey as a trader. That would be kind of good. Somebody will hear this and go make one. Um, but here's the thing: this movie, I think it's called Straight Up Minimalism. But what was so powerful about that movie, it's a documentary about these two brothers, I think, or two friends who start to like really embrace minimalism. But you come away from that movie, although they did it for their lifestyle and for what they owned. I think what they owned was like 5 articles, and that's it. But the point is that movie has you walk away starting to think about all areas of your life. How can you strip things away? How can you bring things down to minimalistic for your thought process? Tim Ferriss just did a killer interview with Rich Roll, and he talks too at length about how he is stripping his life from all this superfluous stuff that doesn't serve him. All right, let me get to Andres here. I'm so glad you're here, Andres. All right, so I sometimes struggle when the market is slow, like now at the summer. Yep, and I'd like to know how to approach it better. So great question. I think this is a problem that happens not just in the summer, but for traders at any point when this is going on, when there isn't action, so to speak. Here's the hard truth. You want to create other important, valuable, interesting, juicy things for you to plug yourself into. So I'm going to take advantage of me knowing you a little bit, Andres, and I'm going to say those are the days you should be go surfing, or you should be getting a skateboard and getting your inner core stronger. You have to have other interests beyond trading. Every trader does, because there are going to be times when it's going to cost you and your capital to be obviously trading when you shouldn't. So it's tempting. But if you have other things that really turn you on, that fascinate you, that facilitate your interests of any sort, it gives you an easier ability to kind up and out and say to yourself, today is not the day to trade. It sucks. It's frustrating, but it's not the day to trade. That's being disciplined. That's being willing to get out of the bed in the morning on the days when you're exhausted and you know you need to exercise. Part of what being a trader is being a man or woman of your word. So you have to come up with ways to commit to being a man or woman of your word to yourself or to that person who can be your accountability partner. It's so critical because this is the temptation, right? And I've used this metaphor before in a lot of different conversations I've had because, most traders are guys, let's just say for now, I have just at least you two guys, maybe a woman's listening, you can identify if you want. But here's the thing. If you are in a committed relationship with somebody, I ask all the time, who is your dream girl? Like the movie star that you just like absolutely adore and fantasize about. Like, who is that dream girl? Like, let's just say it's I don't know, I'm trying to think of Zendaya. Is that how you pronounce her name? She's so beautiful. So let's say it's Zendaya, right? So the question I ask guys is like, okay, so let's say it's Zendaya. Does that mean your girlfriend or wife or partner gives you a free pass if she shows up? And most of them are like, no. And I'm like, oh, you mean there isn't an exception for Zendaya? No, Kim, there's no exception. Huh. So they would be upset if you had an affair with her, if you got that opportunity. And they'd be like, yeah, she'd be upset because the commitment to that person isn't with an asterisk that says, except for Zendaya. The same is true for you guys. If you guys are true to your word, you should not be trading the days you don't see your setups, even if that takes weeks, even if that takes months. It isn't like there's an asterisk, except the day that I'm bored, except for the day that I'm just, a little bit annoyed because I'm not at the number I had set for myself this month. Too freaking bad. If you are committed to being a steward of your capital, that you don't get to trade even when you're bored. That is the kind of discipline you want to strive towards. You don't want to make yourself wrong if you're not practicing it, but you sure as hell want to notice, isn't that fascinating? When I get bored, I get tempted. And when I'm tempted, I cave. Well, you can't be a man or woman of your word if you're not keeping your word to yourself. The hell with anybody else. Are you keeping it to yourself? All right, I'll pause there. Hopefully that answered your question. This was a little bit of a rant, but what can I tell you? All right, I don't have any other questions here, but I've got 3 whole people. So this was awesome. Okay, yes, I think that's the best. But as I just entered to a trading floor, I feel more pressure when I'm not trading. Okay, I'm not. What do you mean? What do you mean? Yes, I think that's best. But as I just entered to a trading floor, are you trading for a firm? Is that what you're saying? I think that might be. Yeah, and that pressure, let's say that's the case, or whatever is the case, Andres, I'm not sure what that means. But the key is that pressure likely, I am sure, even if you're with a prop trading firm, they don't want you to trade your account or their money, even if there isn't an opportunity. So the key is what is going on. That internal pressure is afoot, right? That pressure is inside you. That is an internalized voice. Let's take one guess whose voice that is. I'm actually going to ask you, Andres, to type in whose voice that is that puts that pressure on you. It's one word. It starts with a G. It's the gremlin. That is the gremlin, because the gremlin is likely saying to you, you should be trading. Should, would, or could, remember, are the key phrases of when the gremlin is talking. Yeah, it's your gremlin. Your gremlin is saying you have to deliver, you have to produce because of this new environment you're in, or this new circumstance, or this, new expectation you have for yourself. But you cannot. This is why it's so important to get so clear on what those gremlins are for each trader individually, because those gremlins have a story. I have to take a sip of water. And if you are not clear on the stories that gremlin has, you are constantly going to be potentially hoodwinked by that story. I just came back from New York City, and one of the things that I saw, which I hadn't seen in 20 years, was the shell game. Do you guys know the shell game? It's a famous game on the streets of New York. You've got 3 shells where you've got this, huckster who's trying to get the people on the street to bet on, I can find that thing under the shell. But what they have is a plant in the audience. They have another guy who's part of the racket who wins the money to make everybody think, oh, this is easy, I can do it. But it's all fake. It's what do you call that? A person who's a professional scam artist, right? It's like a stunt that they do. But that is the gremlin. The gremlin does the same thing. The gremlin tells you a story to trap you. That's why you have to get clear on what those stories are. So perhaps now, Andres, you have a new story. Perhaps now that gremlin is starting to weave a different tale, that there's this time limit on you, that you have to prove yourself, that you have to show like, oh, this, perhaps if you're at this firm, that they made a good decision, right? You want to put all of these potential stories that you're listening to, that gremlin is kind of whispering in your ear, down on a piece of paper, and start to get really clear, not in the moment when you're all triggered, but when you have some quiet and some time to sit and consider, are these stories actually true? Are these stories actually real? Are these just made up stories from past experiences? And is this gremlin projecting onto the different participants that are around you, you applying certain qualities to them? I'm going to speak to an example. Actually, this morning, I was swimming. I swim 3 days a week, and I was, away for a while. So I was hungry. I got down there really early to get my lane. And one of the lane, we usually have to share our swim lane. And this gal that I have not really talked to before, I have perceived her all the time as not friendly. That was my gremlin story. And this was because a couple times I guess I said hello. She didn't say hello back. Maybe she didn't even hear me. But here's what happened this morning. The guy next to me had forgotten to get the, workout from our coach. So she saw this. He was, yelling across the pool, "Hey guys, what's that workout next up?" And she was leaving the pool. She went and got the swim directions, like, the workout, and she put it in his lane. He didn't even know it because he was in the middle of laps. But I watched her do that. It was incredibly thoughtful, incredibly sensitive, incredibly decent of a move. And I looked at her and I was like, "I can't believe you just did that." She's like, "Oh, he seems like he's struggling." I was like, "Yeah, he is." That was so nice. I was still in the pool. She was walking out. And I thought, geez, Louise, I have a whole story about that girl, that she's not friendly, when obviously what she just did is about as friendly as anything could be. So that forced me to take a look at this story I wrote, or my gremlin wrote about her. And I want to say, you guys do the same, especially you, Andres, because that story that you have about, feeling the pressure, that is not you. That is definitely not you. It is definitely gremlin. All right. So Jess has a question. What advice would you give to get over the anxiety of staying in a green trade? Jess, that's a really great question. I'm so glad you brought that up. Look, there's a reason that you're afraid. So the question is, and you can answer right here in the comments if you want, is it possible that the amount of capital you're risking is more than you're comfortable with? Part of that anxiety, I'm presuming, is because if it is green, at any moment it could turn against you. So it's possible that the capital you have at stake, if it does turn against you, is more than is appropriate. Now, let me just caveat that. That would only be the case if you are starting to raise how much you trade. So if it isn't that, you can tell me now, Jess, if you want, then you have to say to yourself, is there possibly some kind of fear that I have about success? That may seem like a stretch, but I feel like that possibly, if it's an appropriate amount that you feel comfortable losing, let's just have you answer me, because I before I go down that rabbit hole, I just want to check in to just see, it is the amount of capital that could be suddenly gone. Is it possible that is okay? Yes, only about 40-ish. Okay, you just don't want to go red. Okay, good. That's helpful. So for $40, yeah, okay, good. Jess, you're afraid of success. That's half the battle, man. That's half the battle. It's funny because there was a quote that I saw in the city on a coffee sign that said, it was so powerful. It just said, "It's okay to be happy." That's all the sign said. And I was like, whew, like a knife through me. I was like, hell yeah, it is okay to be happy. There's sometimes this collective angst that we feel guilty if we're happy, or we're not looking over our shoulder. Brene Brown talks about joy sometimes is the hardest emotion for any of us to feel, because it feels like we're not being hyper vigilant. Okay, good. So you're saying, yes, you get that. So here's the thing, Jess. I would start to get very curious about what is scary about success for you. Losing $40 isn't obviously the issue, if that is what I'm reading correctly, $40. But I just don't want to go red. So two sides of the coin. Our fear of loss, our fear of failure is usually, the other side is sometimes a fear of success, because again, we have these stories connected to what loss means and to a story written about what success means. So I would get very curious about what success means to you. sometimes for some people, especially traders, because oftentimes most traders are not coming from a very wealthy background or a very like, family of origin that was like independently wealthy. I find that sometimes success can be a little intimidating to traders. Part of that is because you will lose, your people, so to speak, your tribe. There's a catchphrase culturally called tall poppy syndrome in Australia, which is if you get a little too big for your britches in Australia, they're going to cut you down. Don't stand out. Don't stand up and get counted. Even in Hawaii, there's a hat here that I strongly dislike that says stay humble and pray. And that stay humble, look, I'm not an advocate for hubris, but there's like this implied issue again of this collective, like don't get a little too successful above your people. Now that goes back to the days of us, being on the Serengeti. We were tribal people. We were not going to live if we were on our own. So that's kind of baked into us that we have to be safe, we have to be with a tribe. But when it gets dangerous and it can sabotage is when you start to have success, when you start to do better than your original tribe. And often what comes with that is that response sometimes from tribes that or people or family or friends that are not that conscious. They will start to judge us and be like, oh, do you think you're better than us? Oh, you think you're all that and a bag of chips? And you're like, no, I'm just trying to improve my lifestyle. But there are times when that tribe can be threatened by your success, and that's an understandable thing to be afraid of. However, you're going to have to face that dragon at some point. I would say sooner rather than later, because right now it's only $40. What if it's 40,000? What if it's 400,000? You're going to need to get comfortable with loss, and you're going to need to get comfortable with success. And so, what I say will come as no surprise to any of you. You should do some coaching with me or the coaches on my team, because those are absolutely going to drive your bus. This is part of the key of trading, guys. Trading is the ultimate school of enlightenment. Anything that you have not internally reconciled with is going to show up eventually. The key is, does it cost you more or cost you less? If you do something about this now, it's going to cost you less. Like, coaching is not cheap. It's a big investment. But if you think about how much money it saves over the long haul, I should triple my prices, because I'm telling you guys, if you don't know yourself, the market is going to force you to learn who you are. It's a mirror, a reflection up against all the fears you have, all the things, all the dragons you have yet to look at, all the invisible beliefs that are driving you. And look, you guys are so courageous to take on the most competitive game in the world. I am so inspired that you guys are all willing to do this. It's fucking hard. However, you have to be very, very clear at who and what you are, what these drives are for you to be able to go the distance and to stay alive in this game. There is nothing wrong with having this ambition to do the hardest, play the hardest game in the world, but you've got to be as self-aware as possible. And look, for whatever reason, if coaching isn't something you want to investigate, then start to read the books that really start to have you self-reflect. Here are some titles. I would definitely look at A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, which talks about like how we can sometimes be attached to a pain body, which can keep us sometimes from success and can make us overly afraid of loss or overly afraid of, not moving fast enough. I think right now there is a bit of a toxic belief of, we're never enough. There's more we have to do to develop ourselves. I'm not an advocate of that belief system. I'm simply saying being self-aware is different than the sense of not being enough. I think everybody's enough. I think all of us are perfect. and we have some costly behaviors. That is it. And those costly behaviors, let me say this, they all served our ass at some point in our lifetime. Those costly behaviors now that we really wish we didn't have, I promise you, they saved you when you were a little kid in the different environments everybody was in. You learned how to adapt to that environment, and that got you here. But what got you here isn't going to get you to the next level. And that's why you want to become really clear and self-aware so that those behaviors that once really did serve you, now not so much, you can break free of. Because why not? I mean, it takes some work. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but like, why would you want to carry a ball and chain with you from the past when you have, if you take the effort and the tools that I try to, give to you guys to cut those extra weeds off? Like, well, why have extra weed on you? It's hard enough, this whole ball game. All right, I've been going for 30 minutes. Not sure who's still here. Looks like we got 6 people. So are there any other questions or comments or input that you guys want? All right, Ozer has a question. I tend to emulate other successful traders and end up deviating from my process because I always feel like my process can be better. How can I tame this urge to constantly tinker and deviate? That is such a great question too, Ozer. I think on one hand, I want to say, I love that you're wanting to sculpt your style and that you're striving to make it better. And I really hear that there's a cost you're paying because you are deviating from your process. I can't help but wonder, is it possible that your process, you are still not feeling 100% confident in? I suspect that there's some doubt that your process is foolproof, or you wouldn't be looking elsewhere. Now, I'm going to use that metaphor I used before about the guy with the girl, right? Like, if you're, I think this is like a tricky point because there are plenty of guys who are happily in a relationship, and that doesn't mean they don't look at other women when they pass them. But the taking it to the next level, talking to the woman, getting her number, like, I don't think you're doing that if you're getting your needs met in your relationship, right? So possibly your process isn't fully meeting your needs. I don't know what those needs might be, but if you don't, and this, I should do a shout out now, please go to my website and sign up for Curtin Call. That's a play on my last name, but I have a newsletter. And in that, and also, Ozer, you can ask us for the trader needs list. I'm happy to email that to you if you go to the website and sign up and just ask for it. Say, I don't have the handle off the top of my head where you can go to go get the trader needs list. But that's what I would say. Get the needs list from me and then look at your process and ask yourself, are you getting all your needs met from that process? If you're not, that's probably why you're looking elsewhere. Okay, that's one potential scenario. Here's the other potential scenario. Good. What's the famous phrase? Great is the enemy of good enough. That is a phrase that I love. So is it possible that your process is very good, but it's not great? And right now, it could be that you, and listen to what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that great sometimes isn't ideal. It can be the enemy of good enough. If your process is making money, maybe you should just let it be and make you money. And maybe that means you would be a little bored. Well, okay, let that there and grow, and then go create another process for yourself that maybe is informed by some of these other successful traders. You can come up with a whole nother process if you want, but possibly leave that particular process alone. Is this a good enough strategy that makes you money? And you want to come up with something else. Could be that you're bored with it. Could be that you feel like you're ready to get something that's more complex. That's okay, but don't necessarily tinker with what works good enough. those are the two perspectives I have on that. Feel free to say something if you want me to give you more specific feedback. I'm curious how both of those perspectives land for you. And I'm going to take a sip of water. All right. Do we have any other questions? I'm probably going to have to bring this to a close soon. But what I'm excited about is that there were people here, traders here. Okay, I love that. Great is the enemy of good enough. You're 100% right. I feel like I was just getting bored. Good. That's awesome. I'm so glad I was there. Here's the thing. Boredom is a real thing. And I think for traders, it's a place that can feel uncomfortable, especially if you worked really, really hard. You've worked really, really hard. And now at certain points in your, journey, you don't have to work as hard. And that can feel sort of like something's wrong. Like I have worked so hard for so many days and years that now I don't have to work hard anymore. What the hell? It just like feels incongruent after so much hard effort. So that's why you have to be like really kind of calculated and, oh, I'm just bored. Isn't that fascinating? How do we make sure that boredom doesn't bite at your ankles and have you screw something up that's working well? That's the key. And again, not unlike part of what I was saying to Andres earlier. I don't know if you were here, I was here, but I was there. But part of what Andre was saying about, just getting impatient sometimes when the market is not that active. You have to create other things in your life besides trading for you to pivot to, like hobbies, like, interests, like other skill sets, like learn chess if you don't know chess, or work or play chess game online against somebody better than you. Like there's so many ways to up level your competency and your skill set and to not be bored, that you don't want your capital to be what you use to get rid of the boredom. All right, you could always talk about FOMO. Well, Jess, look, at the end of the day, that concept of FOMO, you want to always look under the hood of it, because what that story is that somehow you are missing out. And that is usually it's the voice of the gremlin. The voice of the gremlin is telling you that you have missed something that everybody else potentially has. That's why I love this other phrase that I got from one of my spiritual teachers: compare equals despair. So that's the other thing about FOMO. I would ask yourself, ask everybody should ask themselves, is the FOMO driven because of you and or your gremlin having unrealistic expectations, or is the FOMO actually because you're comparing yourself to the make-believe, things you're seeing online, and you think everybody else is up here and you're only here? Remember that part of the challenge with social media is that people are only going to show you kind of what they're proud of. Like nobody puts a picture of them crying on their bathroom floor. Like, they put the picture of everything shiny and perfect in that bathroom, not like having a breakdown. And you got to remember that when you compare yourself up against, like, I don't know if you see this now, but I've just seen recently Twitter keeps having people put up stories that are like, I made $1 million. They're not even traders, like entrepreneurs, by the time I was 29 years old. And here's the 17 steps that I did to make it. If all of those people, and I've seen do this, are freaking millionaires, I'm telling you, they would not be spending all their time posting these posts on Twitter. So trust me, there's a lot of FOMO that's informed based on you comparing yourself up against people who may or may not be telling you what is accurately going on for them. And to compare yourself to people that aren't actually living this thing you think you should be living, that's a terrible thing. That's just like, a cruel thing to do to yourself. All right. Hopefully that speaks a little bit to FOMO. So if you guys like what I'm talking about here, I would love for you to go to thewallstreetcoach.com and sign up for Curtin Call. We have one going out this Friday where I'm going to talk about something called emotional non-resistance. I'm doing my 5 practices right now, 5 weeks in a row. This week is practice number 3. Andrea says, thank you so much for your work, Kim. You've helped me a lot. I'm a big fan of your podcast. Thank you, Andres. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so glad all of you guys are here today. And if you guys want me to do this again, I will do it again. I want to be a contribution to you guys. And of course, with the Wall Street Coach here, we're always looking for new clients. Don't forget we have a Discord room that is called TraderHeroJourney.com. You should go check that out. There's a membership involved in that, but it's a hell of a lot less expensive than the coaching with me one-on-one. But I think you guys are awesome. I'm so proud of you, and I believe in you, and I want you to keep doing the work on yourself, because that will make all the difference in your trading account. You guys asked fantastic questions today. I'm so impressed at the level of depth these questions were. So good job. I'll see you guys soon, and aloha for now.